Our first story this week comes from the forteantimes.com. An Egyptologist debunks new claims about the Gosford glyphs. An Egyptologist from Sydney's Macquarie University in Australia has rejected any new claims about one of the most mysterious and controversial sites on the New South Wales Central Coast, known as the Gosford Hieroglyphics. The glyphs site at the Carryong features almost 300 engravings on 2 sandstone walls, which some believe are an example of an early form of Egyptian writing and have drawn widespread interest over the years. They have been long dismissed as fakes by authorities and academics since their discovery in the 1970s, but there are still ongoing attempts to prove the theory that they were carved by the ancient Egyptians. The National Parks and Wildlife Service maintains the engravings are not authentic, as does Associate Professor Boyo Okinga from Macquarie University's Ancient History Department, who is currently on an archaeological dig in Luxor in Egypt. Professor Okinga says as much as he would like the glyphs to be genuine, there is no doubt they are fakes. I'd be the first person who'd welcome some sort of link that because it would make my subject relevant to Australian history, he said. It'd be wonderful, but I'm afraid it's just not possible. A group of amateur researchers has sparked new interest in the site, having found a new, smaller set of hieroglyphs in the area. Group leader Stephen Strong says they are also investigating a labyrinth of tunnels cut into the rock beneath the original set of engravings. It has been carved, he said. It is straight, and nature doesn't do straight lines. There's a second shaft that runs down, and the third one is a gallery that is big enough to park a car. Mr. Strong says new evidence has come to light. The things that have been found next to it, alongside and around the walls, need to be factored in. But Professor Okinga, who first saw the inscriptions 20 years ago, says there are many reasons why they are not accepted as genuine hieroglyphics. First of all, the way they're cut is not the way ancient Egyptian rock inscriptions are produced. They're very disorganised, he said. There's also a problem with the actual shapes of the signs that are used. There's no way people would have been inscribing texts from the time of Cheops from the signs that weren't invented until 2,500 years later. He says it also doesn't make sense why the ancient Egyptians would be at that particular site. If by any chance they had reached Australia, you'd expect them to land on the west coast rather than over on the east coast, he said. The Macquarie University professor, along with many others, has his own explanation for the mysterious inscriptions. Professor Okinga says it's likely the engravings were made in the 1920s, when there was widespread interest in ancient Egypt after the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun. He says this was also around the same time that many Australian soldiers who were stationed in Egypt had come back from the First World War. We have other instances of Australian soldiers having carved Egyptianising objects in the Ku-ring-gai National Park near Sydney, he said. For example, there's a sphinx and pyramids that have been carved out of the sandstone, and we know that that was done by an Australian soldier who was in a hospital in the vicinity, he said. It wouldn't be at all surprising for someone who'd had this fascination for Egypt to have done the same thing. Vast underground complex where the Nazis worked on developing nuclear weapons is discovered in Austria, and it's written by Stephanie Linning. The facility, which covers an area of up to 75 acres, was discovered near the town of St. Georgen and Gusen, Austria, last week, it has been reported. Excavations began on the site after researchers detected heightened levels of radiation in the area, supporting claims that the Nazis were developing nuclear weapons. Documentary maker Andreas Sulzer, who is leading the excavations, told the Sunday Times that the site is most likely the biggest secret weapons production facility of the Third Reich. It is believed to be connected to the B8 Bergkristall underground factory, where the Messerschmitt M262, the first operational jet fighter, was built. There are also suggestions that the complex is connected to the Mauthausen-Gusen concentration camp. Slave labour from the camp was used to build both complexes, with as many as 320,000 inmates in the harsh underground conditions. But while the Bergkristall site was explored by Allied and Russia after the war, the Nazis appear to have gone through greater lengths to conceal the newly discovered tunnels. Its entrance was only uncovered after the excavation team, which included historians and scientists, pieced together information in declassified intelligence documents and testimonies from witnesses. The team is now in the process of removing layers of soil and concrete packed into the tunnels and heavy granite plates that were used to cover the entrance. Helmets belonging to SS troops and other Nazi relics are among the items that have been uncovered so far. The excavation was halted last week by police, who demanded the group produce a permit for conducting research on historic sites, but Mr. Sulzer is confident that work will resume next month. He told the Sunday Times, prisoners from concentration camps across Europe were hand-picked for their special skills, physicists, chemists or other experts, to work on this monstrous project, and we owe it to the victims to finally open the site and reveal the truth. The probe was triggered by a research documentary by Mr. Sulzer on Hitler's quest to build an atomic bomb. In it, he referenced diary entries from a physicist called up to work for the Nazis. There is other evidence of scientists working for a secret project managed by SS General Hans Kammler. Kammler, who signed off the plans for the gas chambers and crematorium at Auschwitz, was in charge of Hitler's missile programs. Mr. Sulzer searched archives in Germany, Moscow and America for evidence of the nuclear weapons building project led by the SS. He discovered that on January 2, 1944, some 270 inmates of Mauthausen were taken from the camp to St. Georgen to begin the construction of secret galleries. By November that year, 20,000 out of 40,000 slave labourers drafted to build the tunnels had been worked to death. After the war, Austria spent some £10 million in pouring concrete into most of the tunnels. But Sulzer and his backers believed they missed a secret section where the atomic research was conducted. The Soviets were stationed at St. Georgen until 1955, and they took all of the files on the site back with them to Moscow. Experts are trying to discover if there is a link between St. Georgen and sites in Germany proper, where scientists were assembled during the Third Reich in a bid to match American efforts to build the ultimate weapon. In June 2012, atomic waste from Hitler's secret nuclear program was believed to have been found in an old mine near Hanover. More than 126,000 barrels of nuclear material lie rotting over 2,000 feet below ground in an old salt mine. Rumour has it that the remains of nuclear scientists who worked on the Nazi program are also there. Their irradiated bodies burned in secret by SS men sworn to secrecy. And if you visit the show notes at www.origins.info, click on the link to the Mysteries Abound podcast episode 103, and then on the link to this article. There are a number of photographs, a map, and a couple of videos associated with this article. "2014 was a year of spectacular discoveries in archaeology. From 4,000-year-old sunken ships to enormous megalithic stones, mysterious man-made ditches, the oldest known examples of cave art in the world, a monumental tomb in Greece, and even a newly revealed pharaoh of Egypt. Advances in technology also enable the discovery of hidden Maya temples in the jungles of Mexico, hundreds more structures in the Stonehenge landscape, and new understandings of the human genome. It is almost impossible to narrow down 1 year of magnificent findings to just 10. So we have chosen to feature 10 discoveries of 2014 that revealed striking new information about our ancient past. From the ancientorigins.net website, Top 10 Archaeological Discoveries of 2014, and this is collated by April Holloway. Number 10. A 4,000-year-old sunken ship found in Turkey is among the oldest in the world. An excavation at the port of Urla underwater archaeological site in Turkey revealed a sunken ship that is believed to date back 4,000 years. The surprising discovery is the oldest known shipwreck ever found in the Mediterranean and is among the oldest known shipwrecks worldwide. The port of Urla, which served the ancient Greek settlement of Clazomenae, sunk following a natural disaster, probably an earthquake, in the 8th century BC, making the area popular for underwater research. Numerous sunken ships have already been found in Urla, ranging from the 2nd century BC to the Ottoman period. Uncovering a ship that is believed to date back to around 2000 BC is incredibly rare and significant, and an important milestone for archaeology. Number 9. Newly dated Asian cave art drawings rewrite history of human art. A study published in October 2014 in the journal Nature revealed that more than 100 ancient paintings of hands and animals found within 7 limestone caves on the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia are as old as famous prehistoric art in Europe. The research showed that humans were producing rock art by 40,000 years ago at opposite ends of the Pleistocene Eurasian world. Maxime Aubert, study leader and archaeologist and geochemist of Australia's Griffith University, explained that before this discovery, experts had a Europe-centric view of how, when and where humans started making cave paintings and other forms of figurative art. However, the fact that people in Sulawesi were also producing art at the same time suggests that either human creativity emerged independently at about the same time around the world, or when humans left Africa, they already had the capacity and inclination for art. Number 8. Mysterious man-made ditches predate the Amazon rainforest. A study published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences early in 2014 revealed that a series of mysterious lines and geometric shapes carved into the Amazonian landscape were created thousands of years ago, before the rainforest even existed. The purpose of the massive earthworks and who created them remains unknown, and scientists are beginning to realise just how much there is still to learn about the prehistoric cultures of the Amazon and life before the arrival of Europeans. The unusual earthworks, which include square, straight and ring-like ditches, were first uncovered in 1999 after large areas of pristine forest were cleared for cattle grazing. Since then, hundreds of the earthen foundations have been found in a region more than 150 miles across, covering northern Bolivia and Brazil's Amazonas state. Until recently, it was believed that the earthworks dated back to around 200 AD. However, the latest study has revealed that they are, in fact, much older. Study author John Francis Carson, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom, explained that sediment cores had been taken from 2 lakes near the major earthwork sites. These sediment cores hold ancient pollen grains and charcoal from long ago fires and can reveal information about the climate and ecosystem that existed when the sediment was laid down as far back as 6,000 years ago. The results reveal that the oldest sediments did not come from a rainforest ecosystem at all. Rather, they showed that the landscape, before about 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, looked more like the savannas of Africa than today's lush rainforest. The earthworks predate the shift from savanna to rainforest, which reveals that the creators of these ditches carved them before the forest moved in around them. Number 7. The largest known megalithic block from antiquity revealed at Baalbek. A new analysis conducted by the German Archaeological Institute at the ancient stone quarry of Baalbek, ancient Heliopolis in Lebanon, calculated the size and weight of an enormous monolith and concluded that it is the longest known stone block ever carved by human hands. Located at an altitude of approximately 1,170 metres in the Bequa Valley, Baalbek is known to have been settled from at least 7,000 BC, with almost continual settlement of the Tell under the Temple of Jupiter, which was a temple since the pre-Hellenistic era. During the period of Roman rule, Baalbek was known as Heliopolis, City of the Sun, and housed one of the largest and greatest sanctuaries in the empire. One of the most awe-inspiring features of Baalbek are the incredible megalithic foundations of the Temple of Jupiter. The temple was built on a platform of stones that are among the largest building blocks seen in the whole world. How they were cut so finely and moved into place has defied explanation, considering the blocks are known to have weighed over 1,000 tons. The gigantic blocks used in the foundations of the Temple of Jupiter came from a nearby quarry located about 800 metres from the temple. The limestone quarry houses two massive building blocks that never made it to the temple, one weighing about 1,240 tons, and the other, known as the Hajar al-Hibla, or the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighs about 1,000 tons. But the German archaeological team found a third building block next to the Hajar al-Hibla stone and underneath it. Still partially buried, the monolith measures 19.6 metres or 64 feet in length and 6 metres or 19.6 feet in width, and at least 5.5 metres or 18 feet in height. Its weight has been estimated at 1,650 tons, making it the largest known stone block from antiquity. Number 6. A 500,000-year-old shell engraved by Homo erectus challenges previous beliefs about human ancestors. Research conducted on a mollusk shell dated to between 430,000 and 540,000 years ago, found over a century ago on the Indonesian island of Java, revealed that it contains the oldest engraving ever found, and that it was almost certainly etched by a Homo erectus, an early human ancestor that emerged around 1.9 million years ago and became extinct around 150,000 years ago. The discovery challenged preconceived notions about human ancestors, showing that, like Homo sapiens, they produced abstract design, or perhaps even an early form of written communication. Josephine Jordans, a postdoctoral researcher at Leiden University in the Netherlands, and colleagues, published a paper in December 2014 in the journal Nature, revealing that the discovery provides evidence for symbolic activity and shows that engraving abstract patterns was in the realm of Asian Homo erectus cognition and neuromotor control. While to many this may seem unsurprising, the finding challenges conventional perspectives about the evolution of human behaviour. Number 5. The oldest known human genome sequence sheds light on interbreeding with Neanderthals. A study published in the journal Nature in October 2014 revealed the DNA results from a 45,000-year-old leg bone from Siberia, producing the oldest genome sequence ever carried out for Homo sapiens. Nearly twice the age of the next oldest known complete modern human genome. The results have helped pinpoint when Homo sapiens first interbred with Neanderthals, and adds more pieces to the puzzle of ancient human migration across the world. The ancient leg bone was found in 2008 on the left bank of the river Irtysh near the settlement of Ust-Ishim in western Siberia. The human femur was sent to the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, Germany, where testing was conducted. The results revealed that the DNA of the Ust-Ishim man contained 2% DNA from Neanderthals, roughly the same proportion that can be found in modern Europeans today. This reveals that interbreeding between Neanderthals and modern humans must have occurred prior to the age of the Ust-Ishim man. While previous estimates suggested the interbreeding may have occurred as early as 36,000 years ago, scientists have now revised their estimates to between 50,000 and 60,000 years ago. The research team also compared the genetic sequence of the Ust-Ishim man with the genomes of 50 different groups of modern humans, Neanderthals and Denisovans. The results indicated that this man was equally closely related to present-day Asians and to early Europeans. This suggests that the population to which this man belonged diverged from the ancestors of present-day Europeans and Asians before or around the same time that these two groups separated from each other. Number 4. A new pharaoh is discovered in Egypt, introducing King Senebkay. In January 2014, archaeologists in Egypt discovered the burial place and the remains of a previously unknown pharaoh who reigned more than 3,600 years ago. The skeleton of King Senebkay was uncovered at South Abydos in Sohag province, about 500 kilometres south of Cairo, by a University of Pennsylvania expedition working with the government. Never before heard of in ancient Egyptian history, King Senebkay's name was found inscribed in hieroglyphics written inside a royal cartouche, an oval with a horizontal line at one end signalling a royal name. King Senebkay was found in a wooden sarcophagus inside a badly damaged stone tomb with no roof. He was originally mummified, but his body was destroyed by ancient tomb robbers, and only his skeleton remained. No funerary goods were found in the tomb, which confirms it had been looted in ancient times. This was the first time in history to discover the king, said Ali Asfar, head of antiquities for the Egyptian government. Number 3. Archaeologists discover 2 long-lost ancient Maya cities in the jungles of Mexico. In an amazing discovery in the jungles of Mexico, archaeologists uncovered 2 ancient Mayan cities, including ruined pyramid temples, palace remains, a monster mouth gateway, a ball court, altars and other stone monuments. One of the cities had been found decades ago, but all attempts to relocate it had failed. The other city was previously unknown and is a brand new discovery, shedding new light on the ancient Mayan civilization. Expedition leader Ivan Sprajic of the Research Centre of the Slovenian Academy of Sciences and Arts explained that the finding was aided by aerial photographs of the tropical forest of central Yucatan in the state of Campeche, Mexico. Some anomalies were noticed among the thick vegetation of the forest, and so a team was sent in to investigate further. Archaeologists were stunned to discover an entire city in an area between the Rio Bec and Chanez regions, extending some 1,800 miles, which are characterized by their classic architecture, dating to around 600 to 1000 AD. He explained that both cities opened new questions about the diversity of Maya culture, the role of that largely unexplored area in the lowland Maya history, and its relations with other polities. Number 2. A spectacular Macedonian tomb and human remains unearthed in Amphipolis, Greece. Archaeologists excavated a spectacular Macedonian tomb in Castor Hill, Amphipolis, dating to the period of Alexander the Great, the 4th century BC, resulting in the discovery of human remains which are currently undergoing testing. Casta Hill is what was once the ancient city of Amphipolis, conquered by Philip II of Macedon, father of Alexander the Great, in 357 BC. Experts have known about the existence of the burial mound in Amphipolis, located about 100 kilometres northeast of Thessaloniki, since the 1960s, but work only began there in earnest in 2012. When archaeologists discovered that Casta Hill had been surrounded by a nearly 500-metre wall made from marble. Several months ago, archaeologists discovered a path and 13 steps leading down from the surrounding wall. It was then that they uncovered a limestone wall protecting and concealing the entrance of the tomb of Amphipolis. Behind the wall, archaeologists revealed 2 marble sphinxes, both headless and missing their wings. But these were recovered during excavations. Bit by bit, the Grand Tomb began revealing the secrets that had lain hidden for 2,300 years, including 2 magnificent caryatid statues, a detailed mosaic depicting the abduction of Persephone, and a secret vault containing a limestone sarcophagus with human remains. Archaeologists are due to announce the discovery of the tomb's occupant in about a month's time. And finally, number 1. Radar finds hundreds more megalithic monuments, chapels and shrines around Stonehenge. In a groundbreaking news release in September 2014, archaeologists revealed the results of a 4-year-long project to map the hidden landscape between the surface of the Stonehenge environs, and what they found was nothing short of amazing. Through their high-tech devices they could see a landscape teeming with burial mounds, chapels, shrines, pits and other structures which had never been seen before. The biggest surprise was a 330-metre-long line of up to 60 buried stone pillars inside the bank of a large bowl-shaped feature called Durrington Walls, Britain's largest henge, which sits beside the River Avon. The discovery dramatically alters the prevailing view of Stonehenge as the primary site in the landscape. Instead, it presents the Salisbury Plain as an active religious centre with more than 60 key locations where ancient peoples could carry out sacred rituals and fulfil their religious obligations. This is not just another find, said Professor Vince Gaffney of the University of Birmingham. It's going to change how we understand Stonehenge. This is the true and shocking story of the lady, Tiger of Cheta, or Blood Countess, Elizabeth Bathory of Hungary. The world's worst ever female serial killer, Countess Bathory is said to have bathed in the blood of the 650 servant girls she raped, tortured, drank the blood off, and then murdered. Upon her arrest, she was condemned to life imprisonment and walled up in a tower of her castle. Reputed to have been a vampire, lesbian and witch, her shocking story is as follows. From the coolinterestingstuff.com website. The strange story of Countess Elizabeth Bathory, a vampire, witch, killer. Bathory was living in Castle Cheta, just outside of Bratislava, when rumours of mass killing started to circulate in the mid-1590s. By 1596, Elizabeth Bathory, still living in the castle, had 3 living children, daughters Anna, Orzolia and Catalin, and was pregnant with son Andras. Records show it was from this year that the reports started of the Countess, along with her daughter Anna and other accomplices, killing dozens of children, exclusively servant girls between the ages of 10 to 14. Later, all of the accomplices would agree that Anna de Volia taught them how to torture and kill these children, and all agreed that Countess Bathory took a whip, cudgel, dagger, fire iron, needle or cutting shears to them as well. It is also reported that the Countess bit out pieces of flesh from the girls, and she also attacked them with knives and tortured them in various other ways. This shocking killing spree continued for years, until orders from the king delivered on December the 27th, 1610, sent Thurzo from Bratislava on a 2-day ride to Castle Checha. He and his men arrived on the night of December 29, 1610, prepared to apprehend Countess Elizabeth Bathory and her accomplices. When his men entered Castle Checha that night, as Thurzo's letters detail, they found the bodies of dead or dying girls strewn about, all having suffered from torture, beaten, flogged, burned and stabbed. Within a few hours, over 100 additional bodies and victims would be found within the castle itself. Thurzo arrested the Countess and all her children and accomplices and took them to Bratislava for trial. Due to her position and showing mercy, the king finally stated that Countess Bathory would not be brought to public trial. Thurzo immediately brokered a clever deal. He recommended his original sentence of perpetuus carceribus, life imprisonment, rather than the death penalty. By order of Parliament, the name of Elizabeth Bathory would never again be spoken in polite society. Stonemasons arrived shortly thereafter to carry out her final sentence. She was never to be let out of confinement. During the night of Sunday, August 21, 1614, Countess Elizabeth Bathory passed away and was found the next day. According to a servant of her son, Elizabeth was buried at the church in Checha on November 25, 1614. Her remains were supposedly taken back to the Bathory family estate in 1617. Reports from November 1619 claim that her grave was found, dug up, and her body was missing. Later that month, the bodies of a number of young girls are reported as being discovered near Checha Castle, drained of blood. Did the Countess rise from the dead? If you've been following my Facebook feed over the last few weeks over the Christmas and New Year break, you would have noticed that I placed on my timeline some stories that were interesting to me and hopefully to other people, and some of them proved quite controversial and opened quite a hornet's nest of comments, judging by some of the replies I got to these postings. Anyway, I thought I'd put one of these up on this podcast because its topic suits just perfectly. Did Jesus Christ live and die in northern Japan? And this is written by Andrew Apothecary from the travel.cnn.com website. This one proved a little controversial and some people thought it was quite interesting. And having an open mind, so do I. Most people would expect the foundations of a global religion like Christianity to be undermined only in blockbuster style by secret hidden codes, Vatican cover-ups, the mysterious Illuminati or the like. Not in the quiet, understated and actually very peaceful style in which Christ's grave does it in one of the remotest parts of northern Japan. For if it's true that Jesus Christ is buried as claimed just outside Shingo village in Amorai Prefecture, then he obviously didn't die on the cross, rise again promising eternal life through his dad, and ultimately give the world Christianity. Even if it's not true, it's still a pretty neat story. In fact, Christ chose a very nice spot in which to live and die. I'll skip the purportedlys and allegedlys, or we'll be here all night. The graves, plural because his brother, Isakuri, is also buried there, are on a sheltered rise near where Jesus lived out his final and otherwise unrecorded years. This is truly rural Japan, and in spring and summer the area is as green and lush as it's possible to be. Just try counting the myriad shades of green. Aside from the largely unassuming village of Shingo itself, it's entirely forest surrounding farms. Amorai's countryside is beautiful, and there are many worse places for eternal rest, except I suppose to the minds of your 2 billion followers, for whom your eternal rest gives the lie to your eternal life. There are local idiosyncrasies to back up the story. To cite just 2 examples, Shingo's previous name was Here, only one phoneme away from the Japanese word for Hebrew, Hebrue, and a local traditional song contains no obvious Japanese words, but does have words similar in sound to Hebrew. Yes, of course you have to be careful with word and historical derivations based on things that only seem similar, but please, no counter-arguments that the documentary evidence for the accepted history of Jesus also happens to be very thin on the ground. Whether this is history, a local Shinto priest came across the evidence, now housed in the museum in 1935, or entertainment, neither is done with disrespect, show or glibness. The graves and the accompanying museum are housed in a calm grove where the trees filter the summer sun and are very well tended by people who largely follow Shinto beliefs, if anything. Within few of the graves is a small, non-Christian burial area. But how did Christ actually get there? And more immediately, how do you get there? Getting to Christ's grave, in Japanese Kurasutu no Haka, as a visitor is a lot easier than Jesus' own convoluted voyage, but not necessarily that easy if you are without your own transport. First though, Jesus' trip. How did he end up in the Amorai apple-growing community? The legend explained, mostly in Japanese, in the compact museum, is that his arrival was actually his second trip to Japan. So much for a visit to Japan being the trip of a lifetime. The historically lost middle years of Christ were spent west of Tokyo before he returned to the Middle East and to religious and political turmoil, and the rest of the story. The traditional narrative includes his crucifixion, of course, which in the Shingo version he avoided when his brother selflessly substituted himself for Jesus. Carrying some of his brother's remains, Christ travelled from Jerusalem via Siberia and Alaska before ending up in the northern Japanese port of Hachinohe and finally inland to what is now Shingo. After such a voyage he deserved to settle down, marry a local woman and father children, which is exactly what he did, inadvertently creating a possible bloodline. He finally died a natural death, aged an average busting 106 years. Why he took the long way round via Alaska, rather than keeping it simple, is undocumented, but the how of the route was confirmed in a testament left in Shingo by Christ himself. So how do you get there? The Shinkansen from Tokyo stops at the same port city where Christ arrived, Hachinohe. It takes about 3 hours from Tokyo, and you then connect to a local train for Sanhoi, which is the nearest station to the graves, although still about 12 kilometres away. In my first visit in 1998, I took a taxi from there to the graves, where the driver waited for me, before driving me back and treating me to a rendition of that non-Japanese traditional song along the way. Assume a presumably negotiable cost of perhaps 10,000 yen for the taxi, not the song. I again visited in summer of 2011, this time by private car, which does make it a lot more accessible. There is also a bus from Ganohi, although there isn't a train station to get you to Ganohi, which is a few kilometres from Keninyoshi, a couple of stops before Sanhoi if you're following this. However, while this isn't the back of beyond, it is decidedly rural, and buses are few and not dedicated to a tourist trip. Christ, I guess, just walked. If that all sounds a bit out of the way for a one-off dedicated visit, The graves are also roughly 30 kilometres from the beautiful Lake Tawada, where there's a popular scenic route following the Orasi River and taking in various impressive waterfalls. You could then make a visit to Christ's grave as an offshoot of a visit to Tawada. A couple of things changed between my visits of 1998 and 2011. In 2004, the Israeli ambassador to Japan dedicated a stone with a message proclaiming the friendship between the city of Jerusalem and Shingo. This neatly suggests an historical connection, conveniently without actually claiming one, of course. And the Cristo no Haka public phone card that I bought in 1998 would now be hard to come by. We can blame a relentless technological process for that. However, apart from a few souvenirs available in the museum, in Shingo you can still buy some Cristo no Hakasaki, a novel alcoholic addition to Christ's known water-transforming skills. Keepsakes aside, will we have to rethink the story of Jesus because of this? A kind of J-Christ addition to the likes of the J-League and J-Pop? Given the obvious sensitivities in play, I'd hate to prescribe anything on that front. But any visit to Shingo should make it abundantly clear that the locals, at least, have more than enough faith to go around. And if you visit the show notes and click on the link to this article, there's a couple of photos and a photograph of the display explaining how Jesus Christ came to that area. It's quite a pretty place when you look at it. And there's also a map if you ever intend to go. We might complain that it's 2015 and we're still waiting for our hoverboards. But if Nikola Tesla were alive today, he'd probably wonder where the hell our fuel-free super-fast aeroplanes were. And who could blame him? Fuel-free planes aside, he actually predicted a lot of the 21st century technologies quite accurately. The 30th of January 1926 issue of Collier's magazine included an interview with the legendary inventor. In it, Tesla relayed his amazing predictions for the future. A world of flying machines, wireless power, and female superiority. Some of the predictions were spot on, others not so much. From the gizmodo.com.au website, an article by Matt Novak. Nikola Tesla's incredible predictions for our connected world. Tesla on TV and portable phones. At the beginning of 1926, when this interview with Tesla was published, television was barely making its first baby steps. But Tesla was already looking into the distant world of video phones, broadcast TV, and worldwide mobile communication. Tesla explained, "When wireless is perfectly applied, the whole Earth shall be converted into a huge brain, which in fact it is, all things being particles of a real and rhythmic whole. We shall be able to communicate with one another instantly, irrespective of distance. Not only this, but through television and telephony, we shall see and hear one another as perfectly as though we were face to face, despite intervening distances of thousands of miles. And the instruments through which we shall be able to do this will be amazingly simple compared with our present telephone. A man will be able to carry one in his vest pocket. We shall be able to witness and hear events. The inauguration of a president, the playing of a World Series game, the havoc of an earthquake, or the terror of a battle, just as though we were present. When the wireless transmission of power is made commercial, transport and transmission will be revolutionized. Already motion pictures have been transmitted by wireless over a short distance. Later the distance will be illimitable, and by later I mean only a few years hence. Pictures are transmitted over wires. They were telegraphed successfully through the point system 30 years ago. When wireless transmission of power becomes general, these methods will be as crude as is the steam locomotive compared with the electric train. Wireless transmission of power was of particular interest to Tesla, but it's his predictions around mobile phone technology that have proved most prescient here in the early 21st century. Tesla on flying machines. Tesla was incredibly optimistic about the future of flying machines from the perspective of 1926. Perhaps the most valuable application of wireless energy will be the propulsion of flying machines, which will carry no fuel and will be free from any limitations of the present aeroplanes and dirigibles. We shall ride from New York to Europe in a few hours. International boundaries will be largely obliterated, and a great step will be made towards the unification and harmonious existence of the various races inhabiting the globe. Wireless will not only make possible the supply of energy to region, however inaccessible, but it will be effective politically by harmonising international interests. It will create understanding instead of differences. The idea of zipping from New York to London in just a few hours would remain a fantasy until the jet age. But we're still waiting on aeroplanes that carry no fuel, as he predicted. Tesla on wireless power and printing newspapers in the home. Tesla was way ahead of his time in so many ways, and since he and Hugo Gernsback were friends, one can draw a direct line between some of the ideas that Tesla had and the fascinating predictions that would show up in Gernsback's many tech and sci-fi magazines. One perfect example is that of the wireless newspaper. Present wireless receiving apparatus will be scrapped for much simpler machines. Static and all forms of interference will be eliminated, so that innumerable transmitters and receivers may be operated without interference. It is more than probable that the household's daily newspaper will be printed wirelessly in the home during the night. Domestic management, the problems of heat, light and household mechanics will be freed from all labour through beneficent wireless power. Tesla was predicting wireless newspapers in the 1920s. But the folks at companies like RCA would actually get test runs of wireless newspaper printing in the home by the 1930s. Aside from being incredibly noisy and slow, the things actually worked. Tesla on female superiority for better and worse. Nikola Tesla proclaimed in the article that one day soon women would rise to be superior to men. But he didn't exactly mean that as a positive thing. In fact, within the context of his beliefs at the time, he was downright terrified that women would become victims of their own success. It is clear to any trained observer, and even to the sociologically untrained, that a new attitude towards sex discrimination has come over the world through the centuries, receiving an abrupt stimulus just before and after the World War. This struggle of the human female towards sex equality will end in a new sex order with the female as superior. The modern woman who anticipates in merely superficial phenomena the advancement of her sex is but a surface symptom of something deeper and more potent fermenting in the bosom of the race. It is not in the shallow physical imitation of men that women will assert first their equality and later their superiority, but in the awakening of the intellect of women. Through countless generations from the very beginning, the social subservience of women resulted naturally in their partial atrophy, or at least the hereditary suspension of mental qualities which we now know the female sex to be endowed with no less than men. But the female mind has demonstrated a capacity for all the mental acquirements and achievements of men, and as generations ensue, that capacity will be expanded. The average woman will be as well educated as the average man, and then better educated, for the dormant faculties of her brain will be stimulated to an activity that will be all the more intense and powerful because of centuries of repose. Women will ignore precedent and startle civilization with their progress. The acquisition of new fields of endeavour by women, their gradual usurpation of leadership, will dull and finally dissipate feminine sensibilities, will choke the maternal instinct, so that marriage and motherhood may become abhorrent and human civilization draw closer and closer to the perfect civilization of the bee. Nikola Tesla had a complicated relationship with women. By many accounts, he didn't know how to best communicate with them. He even had one secretary fired because he believed she was too fat, and he told her as much. Tesla on eugenics and the perfection of humanity. At the end of the Collier's article, we see hints of Tesla's ideas around eugenics that would pervade the later part of his life. Imagination falters at the prospect of human analogy to this mysterious and superbly dedicated civilization of the bee. But when we consider how the human instinct for race perpetuation dominates life in its normal and exaggerated and perverse manifestations, there is ironic justice in the possibility that this instinct, with the continuing intellectual advance of women, may be finally expressed after the manner of the bee. Though it will take centuries to break down the habits and customs of peoples that bar the way to such a simply and scientifically ordered civilization. We have seen a beginning of this in the United States. In Wisconsin, the sterilization of confirmed criminals and pre-marriage examination of males is required by law, while the doctrine of eugenics is now boldly preached, where a few decades ago its advocacy was a statutory offence. Old men have dreamed dreams, and young men have seen visions from the beginning of time. We of today can only sit and wonder when a scientist has his say. Tesla's advocacy of forced sterilisation and government approval of marriage partners wasn't that bizarre in some circles. But there's certainly an aspect of Tesla's belief system that many people here in the 21st century would like to forget. Tesla was a brilliant inventor and visionary thinker. He was a complex man with ideas about women and eugenics that may have been fashionable to some at the time, but cause modern thinkers to recoil. Same as it never was, I suppose. The music for today's podcast came from the musicalley.com. The bandwidth is provided by TalkShoe at www.talkshoe.com. There is a show notes page at www.origins.info. Click on the link there to the Mysteries Abound podcast show notes. And as mentioned before, there is a Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Paul Rexy, or just click on the link to the Facebook page at the show notes. And I'd like to thank these people for being kind enough to give a donation to the podcast over the past few weeks. So thank you to David Jackson, Dee Purvis, John Robinson, Diane Rowley, Adam Homewood, Jeff Chapman, Philip Dunn, David Longdon, Sean Yarnell, William Anderson and Greg Shandling. Thank you everyone, your help is greatly appreciated, even though it's been school holidays here in Australia and I haven't produced much in the interim. But these people looked like they had been through an uphill battle. Several things betrayed the normality of them, like the bandage wrapped around the husband's hand, or how the wife seemed to cling just a little too close to her baby. After giving them a batch of slightly burned cookies and saying our goodbyes, my mother and I took the unbearable 20-second walk back to our home. "Well," my mother started, "they seemed like a nice couple." "I just hope that we won't be able to hear that baby screaming in ungodly hours of the night," I mumbled, instantly getting scolded about how I needed to be more friendly. Easy for my mum. Slightly taken aback, I gave them a short wave and turned away. I mean, both of the couple's cars were in the driveway. Maybe one of them was looking out into their backyard for something. I didn't realise that the eyes from behind the window kept watching me until I disappeared down the hallway to the bathroom. Sitting at the kitchen table and dining on the cheapest Chinese takeout I could order, I strained to finish my maths homework. I nearly jumped out of my skin when I heard a crash from my garage, accompanied by my dog barking like an idiot. "Kimbo!" I yelled, throwing open the garage door, looking accusingly into the dog run, trying to get a glimpse of the clumsy canine. However, Kimbo stood innocently in the centre of the caged enclosure, but stared intensely at the once neatly right back out. Finishing my subpar dinner and settling down for bed, I couldn't stop thinking about what was in the garage. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was in the woodpile was something more. It was like that unsettling feeling when you think you've left the oven on. You suspect that something is wrong, but still try to brush it off. I tossed and turned all night, waking up at the sound of the heater turning on or hearing Kimbo shift in his sleep. But whenever I thought I was finally drifting to sleep, I could have sworn that there was something standing on my bed, close enough to me to where I could feel the added pressure, but never close enough to confirm that it wasn't just my imagination. After facing another sleep-deprived day of school, I didn't even have time to think about the events of the other night until I got home. I was greeted with the smell of rotting food and a plethora of torn paper plates. The black trash can that normally resides in the corner of our kitchen was toppled over, its contents spilled across the once clean wood floor. This isn't right. Peeking my head out of our back door, I noticed Kimbo lazing around on the grass, gnawing on a rawhide. Walking back over to the garbage heap, I noticed the plastic bag looked like it went through a blender. Long tears and holes were torn through the white plastic. Feeling unsettled, I picked up the trash and did my had black beady eyes that popped out of its head that seemed to have no end. There was no neck to determine where the chest began and where the chin connected. A tail flicked behind it, hairless as well, and had the texture of a rat's scaly appendage. But attached at the end was a snaggled, dirty, curved claw. Into the air, I swung my foot out and sent it flying back further into the garage. Without looking twice, I slammed the door behind me and turned the small lock, frozen in place as I heard a shrill squeal through my only barricade, followed by a loud thump. The thing was throwing itself against the door, albeit it wasn't doing much good. Each thud reverberated in my bones. I don't know how long I stood there, pressed against the door with tears streaming down my face. But when it finally stopped, I ran to grab my cell phone off of the couch. At this point, I didn't care that I was in hysterics when I got my mum on the phone, trying to explain what happened through sobs. some friendly forest creature, but was it out to kill me? My mother by this time was angry and tired and told me to get some rest. That's the cure for anything, isn't it? Just go to bed and in the morning everything will be magically fixed. Before I had gone to bed, she told me this: you just can't let those little things freak you out like that. It's always the little things. She was referring to how stressed I was about school and finals, but I still wasn't persuaded. As if I need to say this, but I didn't sleep at all that night. I wasn't going to risk letting whatever that was crawl into my room and attack me in my sleep. But the next morning my mum continued to tell me that I had just scared myself, and honestly I believed her. That was the easy way out, to avoid conflict and to just go to school like normal. And it worked. Though I always had that incident in the back of my mind, I found myself too busy with finals at school and finishing projects. It really worked too, until school got out and I was left alone in the house for winter break. Mum promised me that she would be back by late Christmas Eve, saying that a last-minute flight had come up and the other attendant couldn't make it. As much as I wanted to beg and cry for her to stay, I just let her go. It wasn't worth arguing over something like this with my mother when she had a predetermined ending in her mind. I would be lying if I said that I wasn't scared. But the first several days of break passed without a hitch. I had Kimbo at my side. Something else altogether. The thing pranced as if it was a puppet being controlled by a toddler, its twisted gait heaving itself up and down on spindly legs. It didn't stop smiling, not even when I screamed louder than I ever have, throwing myself off of the couch and reaching for my fire poker. But before my hands could even brush the cool iron of my closest weapon, I felt something latch onto my calf, what felt like hundreds of needles piercing my flesh and sinking deeper into the soft muscle. Letting out a cry of agony and looking back, I saw that it had sunken its rancid teeth into the back of my leg. It was faster than I thought it could be. I felt paralysed, frozen in time as I tried to reach for the poker, but to no avail. In my panic, I didn't hear the loud, snarling growls as Kimbo launched himself at the monster, sinking his own teeth Wincing as I stood up, I turned every light on in the living room and kitchen, grabbing a can of oven spray, skipping over the knives. There was no way in hell I was going to get that close to that thing just to cut it. Shakily standing at the top of the stairs, I let out a hushed whimper. It just had to be the goddamn basement. The one place that only had one exit. I flipped the light on at the top of the stairs and slowly made my descent, making sure burning in its beady eyes darker than the moonless night sky, looking for compensation on the bloody teeth marks that were engraved into its back. Out of reflex I swung the iron rod at it and found purchase in the thing's side, sending it into a nearby wall. I couldn't hold my ground down there. If I got cornered, it would be game over. Turning heel, I began to sprint up the stairs, but almost immediately fell flat on my face when my leg gave out under me. I could hear the skittering getting closer, and I dropped the poker to grab the can of oven spray, hands shaking so violently I almost dropped the cool black cylinder down the stairs. As the monster reached my feet, I unleashed a cloud of suffocating and stinging spray from the can, making sure to aim it right into its black, unblinking eyes. If it wasn't angry before, it was furious at this point. I took the opportunity to climb up the stairs as the beast screeched and whipped its head around, feeling the chemical blend seep into its sensitive flesh. As I finally reached the top, I felt lightheaded and dizzy, most likely due to the wound in my leg that was still bleeding. I leaned on the counter in search of a new weapon, but this monster had no intention of giving me even a second to spare. It threw itself up the stairs, not trying to achieve speed or stealth, but instead was in such a murderous rage that its only goal was to reach me. By the time I had reached the knife rack, I turned to see it barrelling towards me. I held my right arm out in self-defence as it jumped, but to no avail. I only succeeded in giving it a new piece of flesh to sink its stinking teeth into. I hadn't noticed until now, but there was an intense stench of rotting eggs being emitted from the thing's mouth. I cried out as it bit down harder, hearing flesh splitting. I smashed it down onto the granite countertop, only making it bite down harder. I can't say that I yelled or cried, but I let out the loudest, longest scream I could as I felt the bones in my arm begin to split and crack. I needed to stop it before I lost my entire arm. I stumbled to the end of the counter. This hellspawn wasn't going to win. I won't die from some ugly, foul-demented, cat-sized, hairless mole. Grabbing onto the monster with my left hand, I finally smashed it down onto some glasses that littered the countertop. As it opened its wretched mouth to screech, I grabbed it with my uninjured left hand, summoned every ounce of strength to keep my death grip on the back of its head. Letting out a cry of anger and pain, I threw its ugly little face down into the blender next to the broken glass. Smashing my wounded hand into the power button, the whir of machinery and the symphony of cracking bones filled the air. It was still kicking its thin, wiry legs and lashing its tail, which left thin slices on my stomach. The clawed appendage then dug into one of its teeth marks in my forearm and dug down. But before it could do any more damage, the nightmarish and hellish creature went limp in my hand. By now the blender was smoking. I quickly unplugged it and painfully lifted the creature out of its tomb. Its entire head was gone, turned into a chunky mush at the bottom of the kitchen appliance. Only a glimmering section of spine and organs drooped out of the now dead nightmare, save for the collection of chipped teeth that jammed the blades. I dug a kitchen knife into the remaining mass of flesh, not taking any chances, and collapsed to the floor, holding my arm and letting sobs wreck my body. My arm seemed to hurt even more with each passing moment as the adrenaline wore off. I thought I could see a piece of white bone through one of the bite marks. Who knows how long I stayed on the floor, but when my mother finally came home, she screamed when she saw what had happened in her home. Kimbo laying on his side with a long gash, whimpering in pain, the still smoking blender that reeked of rotting eggs and had unidentifiable chunks of meat in it. And then there was me, her daughter, curled up in the corner, dripping with blood and rocking back and forth. By the time she had taken me to the hospital and Kimbo to the vet, the police had been called, finding my blood on the couch and down in the basement. But the real kicker is that, even after I told them what had happened in excruciating detail, showing them my bite marks, they didn't believe me. They told me that it was some wild, mangy animal that had crawled out from the forest and found itself in my house. Whenever I asked them what kind of animal it was, they just brushed it off. After that, my mum decided to move us closer to the city and her work, getting intentionally further away from the forest. When we had left, the Smiths came over to wish us goodbye, and both of them looked like they had finally gotten a full night's rest. But when Laura, I believe that was her name, saw the cast on my right arm and bandages around my calf, she seemed taken aback. They asked me what had happened and if I was okay, but when my mum told her version of the story, which was that a wild animal had snuck into our house and attacked me, Laura broke into hysterics. She nearly ran back into her house, her husband telling us that he was sorry about his wife and chased after her. We left without another word. Years later, when I moved out to college and was living in a dorm, I had decided to procrastinate on studying and surf the internet. I tried my best to leave behind what had happened, but the scars would always literally be there, and the Smiths still stuck out to me. I decided to Google the wife's name, since that was the only one I remembered. Surprisingly, with even such a generic last name, I found a news article about our old neighbours, and had to read it twice to believe it. Laura and James Smith originally had twin daughters, and lived about 5 hours away from our neighbourhood. The news report stated that Mrs. Smith had woken up in the middle of the night to hear her 2 daughters crying, so she decided to check on them at an unusual hour of the night. When she arrived at their room, she had been horrified to find that someone or something was attacking one of her daughters. The article didn't touch on any gruesome details, but it was recorded that by the time Laura had taken a nearby lamp and hit the thing off her daughter, it was too late. She was dead and completely torn apart. The report states that police were called onto the scene but hadn't found any evidence of a break-in, and the case went cold. If I can recall correctly, judging by the time the Smiths moved in next door to us, it had already been 3 months after their daughter was murdered. A chill ran up my spine. It was like every puzzle piece fell into place. The memory of walking into my kitchen that one day to find something looking at me from the Smiths' window was clear. It was the monster. It had followed the Smiths into their new home to assumably finish what it had started. But then it saw me. It left them for someone more exciting to play with, and that had just happened to be me. Whatever that thing was, a demon from hell, evil itself, it had planned to kill me that night. And if I hadn't killed it there, is no doubt in my mind that it would still be after me. And judging by how lucky I had been on that night, I get the feeling that it would have succeeded. Just remember this. Sometimes when strange things start to happen, it may be a simple coincidence. But if it's not, if things keep getting worse and you can feel something off in your gut, know that it's always the little things that sneak up on you in the end.